As with other vision space presentations, I'm confined here due to lack of resources, to theoretical extrapolations from intuitive research and first-generation technology, to make the case for linkages between vision space, autistic spectrum disorders, or ASD, and victims of stroke or brain trauma. The aim here is to spark interest in the disciplines that do have access to funding to undertake the defining research. Vision space charts phenomenal field, or experiential vision, its data structures, and the dynamic of information exchange taking place within it. If we consider our presentations within phenomenal field to be reliant on an underlying perceptual structure generated by the perceiver, we can start to consider what would occur if that perceptual structure were malfunctioning. Phenomenal field is not just a presentation of the world as it is. It's an active tool, participating in forming our understanding of it. Phenomenal field is part of the understanding process, not a display following comprehension via projection. So the question is then an obvious one. What would phenomenal field look like if it were produced by an atypical perceptual structure? And what would the likely complications be? Do these considerations match with reports from those with ASD-related conditions and brain trauma? Vision space identifies that there are two independent data sets involved in monocular vision. These are likely to have independent processing systems, each with respective modes of attention. One closely associated with conscious analysis and the other more subconscious, but prior to in terms of its temporal delivery. These can be broadly aligned with the two visual pathways, what and where, object in space associations, and even to the formation of notional right and left hemisphere realities. In this respect, we understand and acknowledge, of course, that these systems are more like interwoven webs, and that distinctions are more like characterizations than segregations. Get too close and explicit with the qualifications, and the distinctions will disappear. So in terms of the data sets involved, we have indicated that the where, in time, implicit spatial awareness, that efficiently contextualizes the visual and auditory world, is associated with peripheral areas of phenomenal field. And the what, over time, explicit, decontextualized contemplation of objective form, is associated with central vision. If the associated data structures are not, for whatever reason, operating correctly, then important aspects of perception will be compromised or altered. In terms of the compositions made with visual data, vision space also identifies that there are innumerable possible combinations of fragments of data available for us to consider and select as we form phenomenal field. A good deal more is suppressed or remains subconscious than makes it to cognitive awareness. If the information and selection of possibilities is not performed correctly, then our perception of the world will be very different. Jarring, confusing, unresolved, fragmented. In terms of awareness within the two takes on reality, vision space identifies that each principal region of vision forms its own take on reality and has its own form of attention. Attention in peripheral vision being temporally in the present, occupying the full extent of the field structure, dealing with motion in flow, concerned with the identification of events requiring conscious attention. Attention in central vision being focused, conscious, tracking motion, and involved in representation, abstracted from time now. And mediating the two takes on reality requires appropriate oversight, decision-making, dependent on the perceiver's intent in the world, developed from past experience. If we consider the modulation process operation in central vision with respect to stroke victims, we can see that artists record asymmetries in symmetrical objects. We contemplate the nature of objective form using a system of quads. We have two impressions of the object on a monocular basis, hence 4 with the input from the other eye, the overall possibility combination being 64. As we have seen, the vast majority of these lead to outcomes that are jarring and unhelpful. We have to be highly selective as we compose the possibilities and sample them to build the saliency of objective form. In generating this sequence, we had to learn how to make these selections, and also how to ensure that the processes of information exchange were as imperceptible as possible. The example to the left starts to take on form in comparison to the one on the right. Once this short conceptual build of objective form is complete, we would blink and reset it. We wouldn't keep running through the options. If we look at the process underpinning this early stage experiment with fixation on the mug, we would see that it involves the suppression of half of central vision. What would be the result of a broken process here? One where the right brain was not fed with the appropriate information from the implicit data set? Would it result in conflict, with an ability to see only half the form on an explicit basis? What if the quads were outputting a fractured impression of the scene? How would the numbers get grouped then? If this system wasn't operating correctly as part of our perceptual structure, we'd be in a very different place. How would face recognition take place? The reading of facial expression? These are all reported as being relevant to perceptual awareness in ASD-related conditions. If we now turn to the right hemisphere's implicit take on reality, we can understand that failure here would also have significant implications. Disorientation, inability to contextualize situations, loss of the subconscious holistic form of attention leading to compensatory action being taken by the explicit functions of central vision. Central vision now having to build awareness across the entire field of vision, leading to an inability to follow a train of thought that would be natural to someone with a consistent perceptual structure. So important is this function that separate vision space presentations have addressed aspects in greater detail. Without the field structure and a failing modulation function, it'll be exceptionally difficult to objectify things, see oneself in relation to the world and in relation to others. If this dataset is missing from all our forms of information display, we must consider that picture space may encourage and reinforce ASD-related processing, and ultimately lead to redundancy in the neural pathways, with all that entails. The field structure of the implicit dataset is also like to be the principal structure involved in multi-sense integration, meaning that their mediation will now have to be undertaken in series. A queuing system, slow and under constant pressure of overload. From working with vision space and the processes involved, I think I can start to envisage what it must be like for those with ASD. The point is this: without a functional understanding of typical perceptual structures, we're not going to be able to understand, treat or prevent the increasing numbers of people with ASD. Without listening very carefully to the descriptions given by the sufferers, we will not understand them or benefit from what they are at pains to describe to us. The next generation vision space programming architecture is not a nice to have. It's a must have. Properly funded research needs to start now.